Hey everyone and welcome back. I do have to apologize if you suddenly hear the sound of, rushing wind. We had a really bad storm last night and there's still quite a lot of, wind outside today. And despite the fact I've closed nearly every window in the house, you can still kind of hear it at times. I've tried to soundproof as best as possible. If there's a big gust, I'll just stop talking and try and edit that out. But I have no control over the weather. I am no weather wizard. But anyway, welcome back to Pulp Culture Podcast, the show I named just so it had the same initials as a fictional manga series inside a manga series. If you got that, I love you. Anyway, what I want to talk about today? Justice League. So, it's been out... It'll be officially out for a whole week tomorrow. And I'm not at all ashamed to say that I saw it twice in the opening weekend, and there's a reason why I did that. When I went to see it the first time, it was opening night, so it was last Friday, and I went in with this gleeful expectation that I would just laugh at how much this film has failed. I went in expecting... maybe not something as bad as Batman vs. Superman, but I went in expecting... I kept telling myself, even if it's bad, you can laugh at how bad it is. Just because even if you're going to see a bad movie, you know, you need some fun sometimes, and, you know, you like DC, you love Superman, you really like Batman. Wonder Woman's awesome, Cyborg was cool when you were a kid, so yeah, you're gonna at least find something to enjoy. And I came out really liking the film. And I couldn't quite believe the fact that I liked this film. So 2 days later, I went back and I rewatched Thor Ragnarok beforehand, and then about an hour and a half later I watched Justice League. And I actually kind of preferred Justice League. I mean, granted, a reason why might just have to do with my sense of humor. I wouldn't say I was the easiest person to make laugh, or even the hardest person to make laugh. It's just... yeah, I've heard a joke once. And sometimes I just don't find it as funny the second time, especially if I wasn't laughing that hard the first time. But Thor Ragnarok's great, I loved that. I did have a slight problem with Hela. I still think she's a bit of a weak villain. But then again, I'm never really big on the villains. The Marvel Universe has never managed to sell me on its villains. The only ones I ever remember really liking was Ego the Living Planet, and that's because he was a more personal villain. And I kind of like Ultron, but I like the Ultron that was presented to us in the trailers, because those trailers were great. And it's actually a big reason why I kind of stopped watching trailers for films. And this is especially true when it comes to Justice League, because I know a lot of people are kind of upset that a lot of the stuff we saw in the trailers wasn't in the film, and there's now people petitioning to get the extended cut so we can see those scenes. I never really watched the trailers. I think I saw them like once or twice over a long period of time, or they were just playing randomly on my computer screen as like a Facebook advert or something like that, and I wasn't really paying attention. So I'd only seen, like, the promotional images, and that's image of Clark in the field. I think that was the only one I kept the audio on for, where he turns around, he says to Lois, like, I take it it's a yes, just because she's wearing the wedding ring, which is really cute, and it does make me smile quite a lot. And that wasn't in the film, but I wasn't mad that wasn't in the film, because I loved the scene that was there anyway. But yes, I was incredibly surprised by how much I liked this film, to the point that I'm planning on seeing it a third time. I've pre-ordered the Steelbook just because I like having my superhero Steelbooks. In fact, I was looking through what I had and went, oh, with the exception of Batman vs. Superman, I have all the DCEU movies on Steelbook, until someone pointed out to me that Suicide Squad exists, and I threw them out of the room. Because we don't talk about Suicide Squad. Mostly because I don't remember most of it. I've blanked a lot of it from my memory, and not even on purpose, it's just when I went back and someone asked me a question about it, I went, I think the villain was Enchantress. I know Harley Quinn was in it, and Will Smith played Deadshot. That's about the most I remember. I mean, if I sat and thought about it long enough, I could probably recount to you most of the story, but I didn't see it worth my time. I saw it once. That was enough. But when it comes to Justice League, I'm kind of surprised by the backlash. I mean, I know it was very, very mixed production. I know, sadly, Zack and Deborah Snyder had to step down for a while because they had a death in the family. I think their daughter committed suicide, that was terrible. My heart goes out to them both. Like, no parent or no one should have to go through that. And then, Joss Whedon came in, who... I know a few people who say he tampered with the film. I go, nah, I think they just brought him in because he did the Avengers and we're trying to compete with the Avengers. Which, I say please don't compete with the Avengers. Because as much as everyone says it's this great, perfect film, it's not really. It's okay, it's not great. It's defining by the fact that it kind of cemented superhero movies are here to stay, and this is the benchmark now. But yeah, it's still not as great as I think DC are pushing up to be. I think they need to find their own identity, and I think they're kind of doing that now with Wonder Woman and Justice League. And the reason I say that is, like, the DCEU has very much tried to ground itself in reality. Here's the thing. Stop trying to put it in our reality. I think Richard Donner kind of stumbled on it great when he kept telling people working on the original Superman verisimilitude, which is a phrase that literally means the appearance of being true or real. Is it true or real to the world you're trying to build up? The first Superman movie is wonderful, but no way could you tell me that was real life. Same for the first Batman movie, Batman 89, I mean. That is not set in our world, but everything makes sense to that world. And this is kind of, I think I was watching Star Wars Episode 4 the other day, and I had the audio commentary on. And George Lucas and a few of the others were talking about how if everything is explained to the viewer just because it's a different world, it kind of takes you out of it because these people should be living in this world. They should already know this information. So when it's recited just to the viewer, you're being reinforced with the fact of, oh, you don't know this. Here's what you need to know. But if you let the viewer kind of absorb themselves in that world, they can kind of get a grip with it more and they can understand it more because they're not told, by the way, here's the rules. This world has rules. And going into Justice League, it felt like they'd kind of learnt a fair bit from what happened with Batman vs. Superman. A lot of the time, when something happened in there, a lot of us were asking, well, that makes no sense, because a normal person would not do this, or this would not happen in the normal world. DC, your premier superhero, and by that I mean Superman, is a man from another planet who can fly, shoot heat vision from his eyes, has super breath due to the amount of force he can push out, and literally can freeze something. Can survive in the vacuum of space, and if you go to pre-crisis continuity, can do a hell of a lot more. And you're telling me this is the real world. So when it came to Justice League, I didn't feel like I was in the same world as Batman vs. Superman. I didn't feel like the real world with superheroes. This felt like a DC continuity. In fact, if I'm gonna compare it to anything, it reminded me of watching the Flashpoint movie, and how that world was familiar, but not quite right. So, I actually found it very easy to buy into this world, unlike Batman vs. Superman. Just because it was so easy to say, okay, this logic makes sense in this world. Okay, you're not having to explain this to me. And even better is if you ignore Batman vs. Superman, which I heavily implore you to, even though it is kind of fun to go back and look at BVS and go, well, this was a shit movie. They kind of Bruce and Diana keep saying that Clark and Superman were a beacon of hope. As where if you look at the rest of the DCEU movies, no, he wasn't. He tried to be, but no one trusted him because he was a flying man from out of space. However, in Justice League, if this was the only DCEU movie I saw, I would completely buy that. I would say, yes, you lost someone who was a beacon in this world, and the world now seems darker. And that's just kind of what I thought going into this. I thought, okay, let's ignore Batman vs. Superman. And it kind of does a retcon as well, like Cyborg's talking about how the mother box that helped create him lit up the night Superman died. But if you go back and watch Batman vs. Superman, Diana is watching archive footage of the mother box lighting up and creating Cyborg before Clark dies. It's actually quite amusing. I went with my mother to see this, and at the end of the film I said, what do you think? And she went, did Superman die at the end of Batman vs. Superman? And that was kind of how forgettable that film was, and that is kind of the biggest misstep the film can do is take Superman, kill him, and you not even care. I mean, there's a series of videos called Really That Good by Movie Bob, or Bob Chipman. And he compared it to how a generation of people are still crying over the death of Optimus Prime in the Transformers movie. Optimus Prime is arguably less of a cultural point than Superman is, and more people cared about Optimus Prime dying in a cartoon than Superman dying in 2016. And that's terrible. But yeah, let's talk about the actual Justice League and not just the film. I've got other points to say. Batman. Ben Affleck. I didn't like Ben Affleck in Batman vs. Superman. I kind of was drawn out of it a lot because he has this sort of... it's more how he speaks in general. He has this sort of, relaxed tone about him that I don't think Bruce Wayne would really have. And that's obviously down to just the actor. That's him trying to play it naturally, and it just doesn't seem to fit. And then whenever I saw him in the suit, it didn't look right either. But he did a much better job in Justice League. I kept looking at the screen and I wasn't thinking this is Ben Affleck trying to be Batman. I thought, yeah, this is a version of Batman. I'm fine with this. So, I thought he did a really good job, and the opening scene with him does show off both his detective skills and his combat skills, and that was great. I mean, it could be argued that you don't really see him use his detective or combat skills again, but then, he's the one who starts tracking people down with Alfred's help, and then Diana's help when she's the one who eventually manages to get Cyborg along. And he does still have combat skills, he just uses them in different ways. Which is great, because one problem I kind of always have with the Avengers movies is when they're fighting as a team, it seems very staged, oh look, we're all fighting together, as where every scene where they were all fighting together felt like they were learning how to fight with each other. I mean, there's a bit where the Flash, played by Ezra Miller, he kind of sees these people who've been kidnapped by the parademons and just says, I'm out, I've never fought anyone before, I've just pushed a few people out the way. And Bruce looks at him and just says, save one. Which, actually this is a really cheesy movie to kind of link it to, but there's this film called The Core with Aaron Eckhart, who played Harvey Two-Face in The Dark Knight, where one of his friends dies while they're traveling on the way to the Earth's core to restart it. And he shouts oh, he died trying to save the world. And Hilary Swank, I think it is, turns around and says, he wasn't trying to save the whole world. Just 3 of them, referring to his wife and 2 kids. And that kind of popped in my head of like, it's like this bit from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where Arthur Dent's trying to comprehend the fact that his entire planet is gone and it's just too massive for him to think about. So the first thing he thinks of is, you will never have a Big Mac again. And that's what kind of cements in its head. So when he tells Barry, just save one person, he's kind of putting forward that the important point of this is to save people, not fighting the demons or Steppenwolf is not the major point. It's saving the people. If you can save just one person, you've made a difference. And it's really great because when Flash does manage to save one person, he kind of looks at them, looks back and goes, oh. And then he keeps saving these people. He's learning to be a hero. And then when he sees Diana falling, he kind of goes, oh wait, if I've been using the speed to move people out of this room as quick as possible, what if I now use this speed to help Diana get that sword before it hits the ground so she can defend herself? Which is just a scene I really like, and it's these characters working together, and I thought that was great, because by the time you get to the end of the film, and like Superman finally showing up and acting as part of the team, they're working together. They've clearly learned how to work together, and I absolutely love that. So yeah, I just really did love this film, and I'm still surprised by the fact that I love this film. But yeah, when it comes to, I remember, I mentioned him earlier, Movie Bob has been doing this series called Really That Good, and he's doing like a one-off thing called Really That Bad on Batman vs. Superman, which at the moment stands as 3 hours long, and there's still a third bit to come out. And when he's talking about Justice League, he questions why Cyborg is on the team. And this wasn't something I thought about until he mentioned it. And I kind of realized that it's the franchise showing its New 52 roots, because if I remember correctly, Cyborg is a founding member of the Justice League in the New 52. Which would explain why he's in, like, Batman vs. Superman and Justice League here. Not to mention, Bob Chipman brought this up, that a lot of millennials, or at least people my age, will remember the Teen Titans cartoon. And yeah, I know there's Teen Titans Go now, but please just don't watch Teen Titans Go. Go back and watch the original Teen Titans TV series. And Cyborg was a really popular member of that team. I think I had a little Cyborg figure. I have no idea what happened to it. I had it years ago. I think I was like 12. But yeah, he has a fan base. So it was kind of interesting to see him there. I've seen the argument that Cyborg was kind of a plot hole in himself. And aside from the fact that they did rewrite Batman vs. Superman, I kind of can't see the plot hole they mean. I mean, yeah, Cyborg, he could solve all this if he wanted. But it's kind of stated when we first meet him that he's still learning what he's capable of. So even though he could pretty much save the day and track everything down and do this on his own, he doesn't know how. Like, when Superman comes back to life, his suit automatically reacts and tries to shoot at him because it perceives him as a threat. And he shouts like, I'm not doing this, this is the suit, this is not me, I don't want to do this. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because you still haven't quite learned how to override this technology, and this technology could easily override you. But yeah, that was quite interesting, just putting Cyborg on the team. The Flash, I absolutely loved in this film. I've never really been a Flash fan. I think the only Flash comic I own is Flashpoint. And I only own Flashpoint because I saw the animated movie and thought, oh, I want to read the source material for this. And it was really interesting, and I keep saying that there's a ton of heroes that I really want to go back and read stuff for. Like, I want to read some Green Lantern stuff at some time, because I don't have any Green Lantern stuff. Closest to any of that I don't even have any Justice League stuff. Closest one I have is Kingdom Come, which is a story I absolutely love, and I actually own 3 copies of it. I have my original trade paperback, I have a French hardcover copy, and then the deluxe 20th anniversary cover, just because I absolutely love it. And The Flash in this was so much fun. I mean, I've seen Ezra Miller in a few other things. Most noticeably was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, where he played Credence. And I have a couple of friends who are fans of him, and I think they're gonna really like him in this. But he was funny, he was talking a lot about what in his mind, and he was saying, like, I don't get social situations, and I kind of went, yeah, neither do I, don't worry. But he was a lot of fun, because he was just kind of being really jokey, and you got a lot of his backstory in quick bursts without anyone having to sit you down and go, this is, Barry Allen, he lost his mother and his father was arrested for it, and now he's been trying to work in a crime lab to try and prove his father's innocence because no one believed him when he was 9. We get all that, but we're not sat down and screamed in our face about it, and we're not even told, like, this is how he gets his powers. It's an offhanded line by Cyborg where he just says, you got hit by lightning, right? And he goes, yeah, that's the abbreviated version of it. Which I thought was kind of funny. Of like, hey, yeah, this happened. You don't need to know the exact details of it right now, because it's not important, and he might have his own movie later on, and we might explore that. A lot like we did for Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was absolutely amazing in this, but Gal Gadot was pretty much made for that role the same way Christopher Reeve was made for Superman. Aquaman was the weakest, but that might just be the fact that I don't care about Jason Momoa or Aquaman, really. He didn't have a lot of presence, but then again, I didn't mind because it's kind of an ensemble piece, and there's always going to be one person in the ensemble that doesn't really stand out as much. As much as I like Clint Barton, I would say Hawkeye is kind of that person in the Avengers. So, yeah, Aquaman, you're the Hawkeye of the Justice League. I'm sorry. I still like Hawkeye more. And then there's Superman. Oh god, we actually got Superman. Henry Cavill, I've been saying this from Man of Steel. If we gave him the right script, he would be amazing. And I've been saying this from the first time I saw him, and I remember being angered by Man of Steel because I thought it was so stupid. I hated the ending, like a lot of people. But I walked out going, you know, if we gave this guy the right script, we could have a decent Superman. Batman vs. Superman came out and they still kept him mopey. And I remember there's this line, I can't remember where from, that it's like, you don't even have to change Superman to have him comment on something. You just need him to be in that situation. And I think it would have been better if we'd have kept the light Superman in a dark world. Because that's who he is. He's hope. And then in Justice League, we got that. We got a much lighter Superman version of Superman. And this just really made me smile. There were 2 moments that kind of made me tear up. And it was one in the field, not long after he's come back to life, where he's holding Lois and he laughs. He just goes, "You called Mum." And you can see, like, his mother pulling up a few seconds later. And it was just like, that was really sweet. And there's just like this, I fully admit that it may be the John Williams score that kind of made me tear up, because I heard that a few seconds later. But I know I was tearing up before that moment. And then it's when he shows up at the end, he just goes, "Truth, yeah? I'm also partial to justice." And there was the biggest smile on my face. And he was joking. I loved that. Like, Superman needs to have, like, some form of humor. He needs to be light. And I never got that from Batman vs. Superman or Man of Steel. But in Justice League, like, even at the end where he just, like, you know, I like being alive, and then when they destroy it, he falls and he's lying on the floor, he just goes, "I changed my mind, kill me." And he's laughing, and, like, he just has this really jokey moment with Cyborg, and I thought, that is Superman. That's what we've been waiting for. I mean, he's no Christopher Reeve, but no one's ever going to be Christopher Reeve. But I think that was the closest we've got so far to having a successor to Christopher Reeve. They'll never beat Christopher Reeve just because he has defined the role for so many that even if we do find someone who is actually goddamn Superman, if Superman was to crash to this plane of existence and actually exist, our frame of reference would still be Christopher Reeve. And I'm not saying we need to move away from it, I'm saying we need to embrace it, learn from it, and evolve it. And I'm not saying that means that we need to make him darker, I'm saying that we need to learn why it worked and why it was so important to so many. So yeah, one of the other complaints I see a lot for Justice League is the CGI. And yeah, I was laughing in the opening minutes where you're kind of looking at this weird camera footage that a couple of kids have filmed. And it's very obvious that Christopher Reeve's upper lip is CGI. Not Christopher Reeve. This is what happens when I talk too much. Henry Cavill's upper lip is CGI. That I had a good laugh at. But that was the only bit that actually kind of bothered me. I mean, like I said, the second time I saw Justice League, I saw Thor Ragnarok for the second time just before. And whenever there was a big fight sequence in Ragnarok, I didn't feel like I was watching people fighting. I was very aware these were CGI puppets, and it was worse with Hela. I mean, there's a few moments where Cate Blanchett's talking, and despite the fact it's the top of her head that has a CGI crown, her jaw, for some reason, just didn't seem quite right in a few angles, and I came to the conclusion that maybe they de-aged her a little bit digitally, and that was, just why it didn't look quite right. But I get it quite a lot in a lot of movies. So when it came to, like, Steppenwolf's design in Justice League, it didn't bother me, because I'm fairly used to it, to be honest. And that was about it. Like, Henry Cavill's, like, upper lip only bothered me in that opening scene. So yeah, that was about it. But yeah, I think DC needs to stick with this phrase that of verisimilitude. Make it real to the universe you're building. Don't try and ground it in our world, because then you're just bringing in nitpicky logic. Which, yeah, I'll admit that I'm one of the first people to go, wait, why is this happening? Why is that happening? This wouldn't happen in real life. But if you make it a world that's true to itself, with its own logic and own way of running, then I don't question it as much, and I think other people don't question it as much. Because we know this is true to this world. Oh, and the score. I do have to talk for a minute about the score. A lot of people, I've seen these petitions going around for a Zack Snyder director's cut with the Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer soundtrack. And this is the one I really don't understand. I would love to see Zack Snyder's original version of this film, just because a lot of students from my university and things like that worked on these films, and a lot of them have said, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we worked on we would have loved to see in the film. So yeah, I would be interested to see what it should have been. But it's the amount of people saying we want the Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer score back. I don't see what you're on about, because I absolutely hated the Batman vs Superman score. I like Hans Zimmer. He's done some great stuff. But that was not a good score. It was... I saw someone try and describe it as thunderous and dynamic. And the first thing I thought of was, yes, it's as thunderous and dynamic as the time I managed to break a electronic piano and it wouldn't stop screeching at me. I also fixed that piano so no one call my old school, because, yeah, they don't know about that. But when it comes to the Danny Elfman score, I listened to it on its own before the film, and I like doing that sometimes. When Force Awakens came out, I waited a few days to see the film, but I listened to the soundtrack. I went out and got it, and I loved the soundtrack. And I like hearing the soundtrack separate from the film, because it's just this thing I have. I love listening to movie soundtracks. And when I was listening to the Danny Elfman score for Justice League, I really enjoyed it on its own. I mean, I didn't quite get why that opening song Everybody Knows was in it until I saw the film, and I've kind of grown quite fond of that song. And Come Together is just a really fun cover of a Beatles track. I do enjoy that. I didn't get why the White Stripes were on the soundtrack until, like, Jason Momoa is walking out of, like, a pub or something, and, like, he smashes a whiskey bottle on the floor and it's playing. It's like, oh, that's why. Kind of feels out of place, that I'll agree with. Should have felt like there was maybe more music that should have been in the film, like real-life songs. And then it wouldn't have stuck out, but even then, it was, like, 20 seconds, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, my opinion of this film could very easily shift. I mean, when it came to Man of Steel, I went from loathing it entirely to, yeah, it's bad, but it's a learning experience. Batman vs Superman, I came out of that and thought, well, that was alright, and then the more I thought about it and tried to watch it again, it's like, no, this is terrible. So I could very easily change my mind on Justice League, but right now, I like it. I wouldn't say it was the best superhero movie of all time, but then again, I think that's kind of subjective to your own tastes. I mean, we're talking right now, and this is my opinion. So you're entitled to your own opinion. Like, nothing I've said here should tell you that your opinion is wrong. This is just how I see it. Which is why I find it kind of funny when critics say, like, oh, we know what's best for everyone. It's like, no, you know your own tastes. You know what you like. And sometimes it does feel like you're just saying something to get a byline. This is especially relevant when it came to later on in 2049. The amount of people calling it a masterpiece. It's like, I never trust someone who so quickly jumps to the phrase masterpiece. And I say that having written an article called Akira, the Unfinished Masterpiece. I realize I'm a bit of a hypocrite. But even then. So if you enjoyed the film, be fine with the fact that you enjoyed it. If you hated it, be fine with the fact you hated it. But at the end of the day, I liked this film. We're all entitled to our own opinions. There's just a few reasons why I liked it. Till next time.